what's going on? It's the Petrolist.
And the Qatar Grand Prix is go! Good reaction time for Lewis Hamilton. George Russell putting the pressure on Max Verstappen. Hamilton got the launch off the line, goes around the outside, he's hit his teammate. Lewis Hamilton turns into George Russell and the Mercedes collide at the first turn. 3 into 1, did not go.
Hey, what's going on? It's your boy Dalton from the Petrolist, and oh my gosh, Mercedes. I don't know if you saw the Formula One race today. I did, because I tend to see all of them. I actually got my wife to become a Formula One fan as well, so I think we caught every race this season, and we're probably gonna continue the trend. I'll say up front, we are Mercedes fans, followed by Ferrari, followed by Aston Martin, and I gotta say, I think Piastri is a really promising upstart as well. Now, today in Qatar, lap 1, if you are a Mercedes fan, or even just a racing fan in general, you hate to see the P2 and P3 drivers crash at the beginning of the race, because obviously qualifying order is what proves who is going to be closest to winning the race. So you take out 2 and 3, and you take out the next closest competition to the lead driver, which of course this season is Verstappen. So let's get straight into it. The beginning of the race, lap 1, Hamilton gets a great start. He gets out, I would say, maybe even a little bit ahead of Russell. They are kind of clustering on Verstappen. The first move that happens is Russell veers left harshly. Hamilton has to move over to the side. Had Hamilton not moved, Russell would have taken them both out of the race. Now, let's get that clear. The first negative move was on Russell, and then Hamilton had some clean space, arguably a little more clean space than he actually utilized, because he ended up causing the collision with Russell. Now, what I will say is that if Mercedes, because it starts with Mercedes, it starts with the team boss. If Mercedes was adhering to driver order, then that would have never happened, because Russell would have been aware during that first move that Hamilton was next to him. He would have stayed behind Verstappen, and that area would have been clear. Hamilton would have been in front of Russell going into that right-hander, and Hamilton would have been free to make any kind of move that he wanted on Verstappen. And I think that had that happened, and had Mercedes actually run a clean race, they would have ended up both on the podium. At this point, we'll never know if Russell would have been number 2 on the podium or number 3 on the podium. I can only speculate based on Hamilton's typical race pace that he would have ended up ahead of Russell. And if they were paying attention to driver order, he would have ended up ahead of Russell. But at the end of the day, they would have finished P2 and P3 instead of a P4 and a DNF. Now, the reason this is so important, and the reason why I'm actually making a video on this, is because Russell has actually become a liability for Mercedes. I don't know if we can call it an asset at this point, because in the last 3 races, and it's especially frustrating because this is when Mercedes has shown the most promise. Russell in the last race did not give Hamilton the position that Hamilton needed to keep the race going and to really take it to the leaders, and ended up having to do DRS to kind of pull Russell along, even though he was the one who stayed out on his tires too long. And then you've got this one. While Hamilton was at fault for the collision that took Hamilton out of the race, had Russell been adhering to team orders, had Mercedes even really enforced team orders, that incident would have never happened. And while I am a total Wolff and Mercedes whatever fan, I have to give it to Chris Horner on team strategy, because Horner would have ensured that nobody ever had the opportunity to crash into or challenge his principal driver. And that's part of the reason why Red Bull is running away with a lot of stuff, is because I think that Chris Horner is running a really tight ship right now, a truly tight ship. And that is why, it's part of the reason why Perez is not any kind of threat to Verstappen. Now, I understand that Mercedes thought, this light is kind of bright. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. I understand that Mercedes really thought that they needed to go with George Russell because, Hamilton could be retiring within the next, few years or whatever. I think they moved too quick. I think Bottas still had a lot, left in him. And, unless there were some, secret conversations that they were privy to that the rest of the world wasn't, and they thought that Hamilton was really going to leave, then they should have kept Bottas, kept Hamilton, and, let their replacement driver, let that scenario develop. Because now they're locked in to George Russell. I think there are other drivers on the grid who are better than him, who are more level-headed than him, that would love to have a seat with Mercedes. Now, let's go through some scenarios. Say Hamilton, retired. They needed, to have a driver that they can, bring up to principal. Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz and Leclerc, to me, they're on, even footing in terms of, driver skill and ability to lead a team. But I personally give the edge to Sainz. I think that he's more level-headed. Would Sainz love an opportunity to race at Mercedes? Possibly. They're not a slouch. Mercedes is not a slouch. Lando Norris. Would he be able to move into Mercedes? Would he be able to, win championships for Mercedes? Possibly. Piastri, my gosh, he's the one to watch out for. Piastri is already proving to be a better driver, more consistent, more level-headed than George Russell. And then let's just not forget the fact that Mercedes is Mercedes, and any driver would love to drive with them. So I think they made their bed too early with Russell. They spoiled him. And I think last season, Hamilton gave a lot of concessions to Russell, especially as he was working to get the car in a good working order. He tried more extreme settings, and that ended up being feast or famine for him in terms of how the car responded with race pace, sometimes great, sometimes not so great. And he kind of had a throwaway season in which he, let Russell, run amok a little bit. And he's reestablishing himself a little bit more this season, and Russell is not responding to that in a professional manner. So I think, what needs to happen, there needs to be some true conversations, some, I think you would say, legally binding conversations that say you're not going to, violate team orders. We'll let you know if you need to go past Hamilton. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a Hamilton fan. I'm a strategy fan. I'm not a Verstappen fan. But I agree with Chris Horner in the fact that, by the time Perez is saying, hey, I want to vie for the championship, I don't know what they did behind the scenes, but Chris Horner put the kibosh on that, and things are running pretty dang well over at Red Bull, and Mercedes is currently looking like they're falling apart. Now, falling apart is relative. They're in second place in the Constructors' Championship, and Hamilton is almost second place in the Drivers' Championship. So falling apart is relative. But they could be doing better, and this is 3 races in a row where Russell has negatively impacted Mercedes finish. So that's my thought on this race. There's so much going on in Formula One. I'm not going to go through all the highlights. I will focus typically on my, the teams I'm kind of going for. I didn't really watch that much of Leclerc's race. I was very disappointed that Sainz couldn't run today. I think he's a great driver. He's level-headed, and I think he's got the maturity to take a team to a championship. I think he'd be a great Mercedes driver. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. What do you think of my assessment? All right, I'm out.
Go! Good reaction time for Lewis Hamilton. George Russell putting the pressure on Max Verstappen. Hamilton got the launch off the line, goes around the outside, he's hit his teammate. Lewis Hamilton turns into George Russell, and the Mercedes collide at the first turn. 3 into 1 did not go. And